a lot of people say, well, there's no Christ in schools. And I'm like, man, you haven't seen what FCA does. Like they're there, the kids are there. And so if they're there for a donut, whatever, we're still hearing the gospel of Jesus.
It's one of the
awesome.
oldest secrets of youth ministry is get pizza and girls, and you're gonna get
them every time. Yeah.
Yeah. So donuts work too.
Yeah, they do.
I mean,
they do
on Sunday morning. But anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, that like our goal is really just to equip as many students as we can with the gospel.
Yeah.
And so we have a discipleship strategy: engage, equip, and empower. And we want to engage these students through things like the huddles. We want to equip them with the resources needed, and then we want to empower them to go out and share.
Welcome to Let's Talk About That, the podcast where we take a deeper dive into Sunday's message and explore any questions you might have. I'm your host, AJ Stevens, joined by lead pastor Chip Parker, and I'm thrilled to be on this journey with you. Whether you're a longtime member of the Orchard or a first-time visitor, Let's Talk About That is your space to explore, reflect, and connect. Join us as we navigate the intricacies of faith, spirituality, and daily life, seeking to understand how the wisdom shared on Sundays can be applied to our modern challenges. So grab a cup of coffee, find a comfortable space, and let's dive in together. This is Let's Talk About That, where the conversation about Sunday's message never stops. Well, this week's a little bit different. This week, we are not going to be unpacking a whole lot of what happened yesterday, Sunday. This week, we have a special guest with us instead, and this special guest is actually the OG in the room, Chip.
OG, what does OG stand for?
Original gangster.
Oh, well, in that case, no.
He's not
the OG, but he has been at the Orchard longer than either of us.
I have.
We're still keeping the title for the message, to be clear. Still the original OG. That's great. Trey, it's Trey Lee. Trey, how you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm glad to be here, and I love whatever Chip just walks into something like that. That's my favorite. We're like 13 seconds in, and there it is.
What do you see? There it is.
What is that?
I love it. It's like the time that Chip gave me all the Gen Z words. If you missed that podcast, that was a fun one, too.
That was great. So,
yeah, that was fun.
Great.
That was fun.
It was Pebbles, baby.
Yeah.
Pebbles.
It'll never happen.
So somebody sent me the video that you got that inspiration from the other day, and I was like, seen it already. So that's the first time maybe that you've been ahead of other people in pop culture references. So
man,
kudos to you.
Look, I want to tell you how far ahead of pop culture I am. We were at the Orange Conference this week up in Atlanta, and churches from all across the spectrum in there, right? Like all over.
Yep.
And there is a segment of pastors who feel that part of the pastor's job description is dressing as trendy as they can with denim jackets, skinny jeans, and retro sneakers.
Youth pastor culture, baby.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, number one, here I am.
Well,
in essentially a Columbia shirt, jeans, and my white sneakers.
North Florida culture, baby.
Let's go. Sir. But what I noticed is that there were a lot of these like classic old school Reeboks that were going around, like the white ones, you know what I'm saying?
Is that true?
There were.
All right.
I mean, I know. I mentioned it to Michael, and I was like, look at those. And I was like, I got a pair of those. And Michael's like, yeah, but you have a pair because you've always had a pair because you're an old man. Not because they're retro. And they've come
back. You just lucked out when they came back around.
Pair. So I was ahead of culture. I had them before they did, for sure.
Unironically.
Yeah. You kind of lucked out and it came back around to you.
I wouldn't say lucked out. I would say planned ahead.
Yeah, planned ahead. Sure. So Trey, how long, we just said you're the OG. How long have you been at the Orchard?
So I actually started coming when I was a student with my family. And our first Sunday was the second anniversary of the start of the Orchard. So that would have been, I guess, 2010.
Wow.
Somewhere in there. So 2011, maybe.
Probably 2009, maybe.
Yeah, even, I guess.
That's crazy.
So, and we were in the skating rink by then, right?
We were, yeah.
Yeah, because it was Holiday Inn for 6-ish months and moved to the skating rink. But that was probably either before we launched a second location or right around the beginning of launching Live Oak.
Right before, even before Live Oak, there was a location that was kind of getting launched whenever I first got there.
It was actually an autonomous plant that was launched because the plan for the Orchard was never to be a multi-site church.
Right.
It was to be a church planting church, and because of history, and if you've been through the Next Steps class, you might have even heard some of this. the church that planted did not survive because of a moral failing in leadership.
Right.
And that caused Pastor Eddie to look back and say, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this, because if we were still connected to the church we just planted, we could have stepped in and helped.
Yep.
And thus he came to the multi-site model, and Live Oak is still here today.
Yeah.
And
I remember at launching and seeing so many people that attended regularly with us being willing to go and start this new location. And it was interesting, like as a teenager, to see these people who were maybe leaders in our student ministry or had invested a lot into us, and then all of a sudden, like, they're up and gone to a different location, and nobody knew what that looked like or how that was going to look. Are they going to have a student ministry? Or our friends that come from Live Oak going to no longer be in student ministry? And it was cool just kind of navigating all that and seeing how all that would kind of flesh out over the next few years. And it's pretty funny how much has changed at the Orchard since then.
I don't think there's been many changes at the Orchard.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. We always say at the Orchard, if you're here because of what we do, and you like it, you may not stick long, because what we do changes a lot. But if you're here because of why we do it, that's not going to change. I don't think that has changed.
No.
How old were you when you came to the Orchard?
I was trying to think about it. I was either a sophomore or a junior in high school, so 15-ish, somewhere in there. I wasn't driving yet, so I guess I had to be about 15 when we started coming.
Okay.
So here's a cool full circle, I think moment. You were in student ministry when you started coming to the Orchard. We just got done with the Orange Conference, and really the whole point of Orange Conference, if your location pastor didn't talk about it this past Sunday, is to figure out how to lead and equip the next generation.
Right.
And so I would love to hear, because you've been here so long and because you've seen both sides of it, right? You went from a student in our student ministry to the student pastor, like led our student ministry, and now you've got kids that you're raising on your own. You're not the student pastor anymore, but I would love to hear maybe a story on how, at a young age, sophomore in high school, you were impacted by one of the leaders who was in that student ministry.
Yeah, so I could talk about a ton of them, and a lot of them are still at the Orchard, but I think the one that I'm going to kind of mention right now is Vince Camp, and I think most people at the Orchard know Janice and Vince, but Vince was my small group leader. So John Jackson was our student pastor, invested a ton of time into me and a lot of others, and I'm forever grateful for that. But I look back and think about Vince because he was there, not just at student ministry, but he came to my baseball games. He came to whatever events we had going on in high school. He was just present all the time. And I read a statistic recently that if a child has a small group leader, then they are 25% more likely to stay connected to the church whenever they leave home, because they saw the impact beyond just a pastor or just their parents, but they had some other adult in their life. And so I saw that, and I thought about Vince, which is why he comes to mind right now, just being there, being present, still to this day being present. As I've been navigating a job change, Vince has been there to be able to talk to and encourage. And so it's cool just, being a part of our student ministry, seeing Vince there, and then Vince also bringing us dinner for both of our kids whenever they come home, whenever they were born and we were home, bringing us dinner and just, sitting with us for a minute. And so seeing full circle, I mean, that's 15 years of relationship that started really because he was just willing to say yes and be a small group leader.
Man, that's awesome. Shameless plug if you're looking for a place to serve. I said this Sunday, and I mean this, and it was cool to hear some of the stories from Orange, but we say it's the next generation all the time.
Yeah.
But when you get to moments like that, right, and then you see how him cultivating the relationship and you led you to where you are, it's the generation of right now too.
Absolutely.
I mean, these kids, these students, they're able to have an impact right now. So I think that's really, really cool. In fact, I was just looking around the room last night, and there was a story that was shared at Orange, and this is how this kind of unfolded. But he said they did their best to try to give students a platform to lead, right? And I think maybe you're in the room for this, Chip, but there's a church in Pennsylvania, and he said they had incorporated some of these students into the prayer team. And there got to a point where there were a few Sundays where they said, hey, let's not just incorporate them, let's let them lead with prayer here. And so these were the kids, these students were the ones that went down and prayed with you down front. These were the ones that were leaning in for you. And
like standing at the altar waiting for people to come forward.
Yeah, right.
Cool.
Yeah. And he said the line to go receive prayer at their church had never been longer than it was when it was students leaning in to be the ones to pray, which I thought was just absolutely incredible, right? It's not the next generation, it's the generation of right now. It's the generation that God uses, and just a really cool thing, I think, to see that come full circle. And so when I was looking around the room last night at our night of worship, I was reminded of that because I saw a pile of students, right, who were there from from our locations at a night of worship, which is just a really, really cool thing. So.
Yeah, and that's, kind of been your journey, like you said, Trey, is like, okay, I was in student ministry, and then I started serving in student ministry. Right. Then I got to lead student ministry. And so it was a pretty unique journey for you to have that happen all in the same place.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys were thinking hiring me, but I appreciate it.
I have no idea, if I'm being honest. And since he's not in the room, I'm blaming that entirely on Pastor Eddie. Yeah, because that was not. No, you did a good job. It was a season of the Orchard where we were kind of in transition with student ministry, right? Because John Jackson, who led our student ministry for years, did a phenomenal job, had transitioned away to something else. And so there was a leadership gap there. And Trey stepped in to fill that gap. And then, at some point, he was just like, all right, well, not transitioning. You're the one we transitioned to. Yeah. And that was a season thing,
Yeah, for sure.
Because Trey, maybe this is a good conversation to have. You have kind of always wrestled with, what does a call to ministry look like?
Yeah.
And part of the conversation that you and I have had over the years is that every Christian is called to ministry. Right. There are some Christians that are called to a ministry, which is like, hey, maybe that's a church, maybe that's a specific ministry in a church, maybe it's a organization like the Pregnancy Care Center outside of the church, but something specific you're called to, just not vocationally. And then those who are called to the ministry, which is a vocational calling to ministry. And maybe that's where we would even say, maybe specifically even the pastorate, right? Like the ministry of the word. And so maybe take a minute and kind of walk us through some of your journey through that and what that was like at the Orchard, and then where that has you today.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, again, how everything comes full circle. I felt a pretty strong calling into ministry when I was 17, and Pastor Eddie was there, and it was at a student camp over the summer one night, and I just felt pretty loudly that this is what God was calling me to do, but I didn't know what that looked like. And so at 17, you feel a call to ministry. Automatically, you think like, oh, I'm going to be a pastor. And
yeah, because ministry is pastor or not.
Right.
There's only two options,
especially to a 17-year-old. And so we talked through that, and Eddie and I, even before this, we had been meeting for breakfast weekly throughout high school and even early parts of college. Every Tuesday morning at IHOP, the waitress would just have our food there. She just knew we were coming. And so we talked through that a lot. And obviously, like you talked about earlier, the transition at the Orchard kind of started to take place in student ministry. And I felt like that was where I was supposed to be. And so talking through that with Eddie and with you, we eventually kind of made that decision to go into that role. But you guys had kind of let me be an assistant to John for a long time before that. And so I'd kind of, wet my feet, and obviously then eventually just kind of dive in fully. And honestly, if you asked me at 20, that's what I was going to do the rest of my life. I was going to be the student pastor at the Orchard, and I was also going to teach because I felt like that was a strong calling. I was going to be bivocational.
Yeah, that was always, from the outside looking in, and which I think maybe is why this was a journey for you, is it always seemed like the calling to the school system may have been a heavier call for you than the calling to student ministry.
And it took some, took some time to kind of maybe navigate that and learn that because, again, when you feel that call at first and you're not really sure what that looks like, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be a pastor one day, so this is the right move or whatever. And eventually kind of, again, through just a lot of discussions with you, with AJ, various people, that season kind of came to a close. And it was a good thing that it came to a close. I think I had served the time that I was there, and I don't doubt that at any point God had me there for a reason, that was where I was supposed to be. But I knew when that door shut, and it was actually very relieving because I felt like I'd kind of waited that out a little longer than I needed to, and connections with some of the students were, kind of, I don't know if they were wearing thin is the right way to say it, but they were not as strong as they once were, and the school system was, I was making a greater impact there. And so just praying through it, you actually gave me a book to read, which I've read again recently, called Discerning Your Call to Ministry, and
which is where we get those categories, right?
Yeah.
Of ministry, a ministry, and the ministry. It's
right.
Discerning Your Call to Ministry by Jason Keith Allen.
Yeah. And so eventually I just stepped into the school system full time, and I actually had a buddy of mine, Carter Jackson, who's John's son. Carter said one time, we were talking to somebody about their calling, and he said, I can't really make this completely backed up biblically. He's like, but I also can't disprove it biblically. He said, I have discerned that my calling is the talents that I have and the passions that I have, and somewhere those things intersect, and that's what my calling is. And he said, basically, this is what I'm good at. This is what I love to do, and whatever falls in those categories is my calling. And so I was able to really discern, like, hey, my calling is to serve students in the school system. Yeah, and so that's kind of where I went with that, and until this year, that's exactly what I did. And I don't think my calling has changed. I just think that it's shifted and morphed and prepped me for this new season with FCA.
So what is this new season? So now it sounds like, from the outside looking in, this is really cool because God's married these two things that you felt passionate about 100%. And got you to where you are now. So tell us about what this season is.
Yes, so I'm going to be the area director for Fellowship.
Going to be or are?
Going to be when the school year starts. I've
it's
started
like our realized eschatology. We live in that already.
Yeah,
not yet.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Did we just find our nerd out section? So here, we say we joke, we mean that is that the Christian life is a whole lot of already, but not yet, right? Like we are already made righteous by the blood of Jesus, but that we are not yet practically righteous in our living. And chances are on a Monday morning, getting kids ready for school, you may have fully realized that, right?
Need some more of that sanctification until that coffee kicks in.
And then, for even the kingdom of God, right? Jesus came preaching, repent, the kingdom of God is at hand. And yet we know that the kingdom that has already been inaugurated won't be consummated until he comes again to set up his throne, kingdom, and dominion here on this earth. So it's funny, Trey, hearing you talk about the yes and no, because a lot of the Christian life is that already but not yet.
Right.
But why don't you tell us about your already but not yet?
Basically, this FCA job came open, and JT, who was my high school baseball coach, which is a crazy story for another time, said, this is your job. And I was like, dude, I'm not leaving the school system. And he said, no, this is your job. And I said, okay, whatever. And so it was offered to me, and I was like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. I've just got the job that I wanted in the school system, and I don't know, I'm just not interested. And so eventually I'd said no enough times. My wife said, did you ever pray about that? And I was
Come
like,
on.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm not sure that I do it. And when I did pray about that, it came abundantly clear that this is the job that I'm supposed to take in this season. And so the one thing, the why it's already but not yet kind of deal is I asked Noah, who will be my boss, if I can finish out my obligation to the school system this year. And he said, no problem. And so that's why it's kind of already but not yet. So 20 days left in the school system, and then I will officially be kicking off with FCA. But I have been doing a little bit on the side, and it's been a blast, and super excited for the direction that's heading.
So what does that look like? Tell me, so the direction that's heading, all that kind of stuff. What is your goal as the area director?
My goal, man, is just to reach people with the gospel of Jesus Christ, specifically through coaches and athletes. The influence that they have on the school system is unreal. I mean, you guys have seen it. It's kind of taboo in a lot of ways in movies and TV shows, but coaches and athletes have a ton of influence. And so if we can reach students through the influence of coaches and athletes with the gospel of Jesus, it's not necessarily just the methods that matter, it's the end result. And so we want to attack the teams, we want to attack huddles at schools. We want to make sure we have...
What do you mean when you say huddles?
Huddles are just basically a Bible study that happens at the school, and it looks different kind of at every school. Brantford High School has one that Tim Clark does, and they do a lot of in-depth Bible studies, and it's awesome. And then LCMS has different speakers come up every week, and there's about 150 to 170 kids in there, and it's almost like a short devotional for those kids each week. And so it looks different for every school, but our huddles are kind of our main ways to get into the school. I think what really drew me to this was I still get to work with the schools. And a lot of people say, well, there's no Christ in schools. And I'm like, man, you haven't seen what FCA does. Like they're there, the kids are there. And so if they're there for a donut, whatever, we're still hearing the gospel of Jesus.
It's one of the
awesome.
Oldest secrets of youth ministry is get pizza and girls, and you're gonna get
them every time. Yeah.
Yeah. So donuts work too.
Yeah, they do.
I mean,
they do
on Sunday morning. But anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, that like our goal is really just to equip as many students as we can with the gospel.
Yeah.
And so we have a discipleship strategy: engage, equip, and empower. And we want to engage these students through things like the huddles. We want to equip them with the resources needed, and then we want to empower them to go out and share, which is a lot of like my story at the Orchard. I was engaged through our student ministry, equipped by our staff, by our congregation, and then empowered to go out and do. And so that kind of bought me in immediately with Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
I love that. And while we are here on the podcast, and this is going to be recorded and go down in the internet to live forever, I would just like to point out that Trey was not always super happy about some of the equipping that happened with the staff. But I'm glad that you see that it is ultimately for your good.
I want to hear more about that. What do you mean?
Is there like a podcast after story type thing? I don't know.
Yeah, we can talk about that after.
Yeah.
We can talk about that after.
Behind the scenes?
Let's just say sometimes Trey and I had fun conversations.
Yeah.
In love.
Yeah.
In love.
Yeah. Hard love.
That's good. So I'm listening to this, and I'm your average person, whatever. 2 questions. How do I get involved? What do you need?
So how do you get involved is, we always need volunteers, because if we're going to be reaching as many students as we can reach, which each school system obviously is different, Columbia County being our largest school system, we have a chance to reach 6,000 students just in the public school system. That's not including our private schools, our charter schools. We need volunteers.
Man, think about it for a second, real quick, pause. So one of our goals at the Orchard is to reach 5,000 people in the next 5 years. And I know that's become a whole thing because that was a number that you threw out and it stuck.
The actual number was 1%, but I love that we grabbed onto that. I do. I love that we grabbed onto that.
Yeah, but here you are in the public school system, and we talk about this all the time at the Orchard. We talk about impacting lostness, and we say that impacting lostness doesn't just mean butts in seats on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Right? Impacting lostness is the scope with which we're able to reach people with the gospel,
right,
where they're at. That doesn't mean they come to the Orchard. That counts. It means we reach people where they are, and that counts, right? And so I just think it's cool. You just had 6,000 people, kids, students, alone in the public school system. And if we got passionate about that, if we lean into that, if we said, this is the generation of right now, not the next generation, and we believe that Jesus works on them, and we believe that Jesus saves them, and we believe that Jesus uses them, then there's a big chunk of who we're trying to reach with lostness right there in the public school system.
Yeah.
All right. So give me your counties real quick.
I'll have Columbia, Hamilton, Lafayette, and Suwannee counties.
Okay. So right here, Hamilton County, 1,657. Lafayette, 1,144. You said 6,000 in Columbia. What were the other counties?
Suwannee,
5,935 students. I mean, like you say, the kids are there. Oh, and granted, I know that you're not in the elementary schools with
not yet.
Elementary schools.
We're going to be there. We're going to be there.
Actually, the school district size for Columbia schools is 9,887.
Really?
And so, yeah, it's like you say, massive.
Yeah,
massive. So just in those school districts, we're already talking about 18,000 kids in that school district that Trey is going to be commissioned as a missionary to go impact.
But that Trey can't do it on his own. And this is why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because I want you to say it. I want you to speak it, because I think we have a lot of people who are listening and they're like, man, I wish I could have an impact. I wish I could do something. I'm waiting for God to give me a sign. And I'm hearing you and I'm like, hey guys, maybe this is that. Maybe God wants you to lean into the next generation. And so,
what does that look like for a volunteer?
So you have to get volunteer approved. And what's really cool is we're really working towards, having a good system in place to make sure that not just everybody is volunteer approved, but people who passionately want students to know the gospel. And so they're going to need to have, this equipping, be willing to just kind of serve and volunteer in whatever capacity. And so for some people, that's just bringing donuts to a school and dropping it off. For some people, it's speaking at different huddles that we have at different schools, or even if you wanted to be like a character coach and just be involved with, I'll just pick on the LCMS baseball team because I know their coach pretty well, considering it's me.
I need to tell you some things I've heard about their coach.
Man,
sketchy.
But having a character coach there who's
clear, Trey is the coach. For those of you who don't know,
but having a coach or a character coach there who's another voice for those students, almost like a small group leader. We have,
which is actually something that Pastor Eddie did at Branford this year. With the volleyball team, he was asked to come be a character coach for the volleyball team at Branford High School, and it was a really cool opportunity.
Yeah. And I mean, there are tons of opportunities to serve. And what I really, want to be heard is this isn't about, and you guys are comfortable, my heartbeat. This isn't about the Orchard, and it's not even really about FCA. It's just about reaching students. And that's kind of the heartbeat behind what we want to do. But FCA does have a ton of specific opportunities, but then a ton of random opportunities too. I mean, if you just want to greet people at our events, our back to school kickoffs, we need volunteers. But then here's another thing is financial support, because this can't just be done by the money in my pocket, because that'd be about net zero right now.
Zero, old school internet. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. So looking for support financially for monthly supporters or businesses to partner with us, people to be willing to just kind of give of their time and really support raising as a missionary.
So pause, because I think a lot of people don't completely understand how this works. So, and this was one of the reasons that, Trey, you and I had some conversations, which you did with AJ before you stepped into this, because this was a big step of faith, not just for you, for your family.
Yeah.
Because with FCA, there's not just a salary that come down from corporate FCA that pays your bills.
Right.
So you have to raise your own support, and then FCA can help set your salary from there. But it's up to you to raise those funds.
Right. 100% of it, literally.
And so stepping out was like not a guaranteed salary when you said, hey, I'm leaving the school and going into FCA.
Right. Yeah. I've had a guaranteed paycheck in the school system from day one. And so this was different. But in that season of praying about it, basically I came to the place of, okay, I want to be obedient to you, God, and I trust that you're going to provide. But also the other side of that, and Savannah and I talked through this before I took it. If you don't provide, then there's a reason for that in this season, and we're going to trust that that you're good no matter what in this. And so we still believe that He is going to provide, but provision may look different than what we think it looks like sometimes. And so super excited to walk through this season. It's helped my wife and I communicate better and be prepared for, what's ahead. And I've got to build a lot of new relationships through it as well.
Yeah, and AJ, you're aware of this, but my favorite part about this for Trey is that Trey has always been like the, Dave Ramsey got the nerd, the free spirit. Trey has always been the nerd. He's the saver. He's the planner for the future. I've got to have a 401k. Trey, you're 8 years old. I don't know that you need a 401k.
Yeah.
But, and here he is like, you know what?
Send it.
We're just going to see what happens. God's going to provide.
I channeled my AJ,
That's right. Come on, baby. So how do I do that? I'm listening. I realize, man, I only have so much time, margin. I can't be there, but I want to impact 18,000 students somehow. How can I make sure that I take some of the anxiety off of your plate and I lean in and I support you financially? What's my step to support you?
Well, first, for those of you still listening, kudos to you guys. Glad you're here, and thanks for staying tuned in.
You have a voice that kind of like wants to lull me to.
Yeah, I love that. But man, first, I would just like to sit down with anybody who is interested, and I'll have time to do that all summer to meet you where you are and face to face.
How can they get a hold of you?
Well, I don't necessarily want to put my number out there on this podcast.
Imagine thinking we have enough people to be working with.
But dozens of listeners.
So let's say this: if they contact you via the church website, we can forward that.
Sure.
Or
I also have a church email for anybody, treylee at orchardcc.org.
It's still active? I thought we canceled that like years ago.
No, y'all haven't yet.
So that's great. Let's do that. Treylee at theorchardcc.org.
Yes. So if you want more information,
you drop that in the podcast notes.
That'd be awesome.
Producer back there. By the way, he got my microphone set up. What a guy. Guy. Sorry for breaking stuff.
Love that. So yeah, just reach out and I'd love to connect with you and pick a time to sit down face to face and talk about, how you can help partner. And, some people think, well, I don't have margin, but your $5 a month is $60 a year. And that serves some way. That's donuts for a huddle. That's t-shirts for a couple students. Like your $5 a month is really cool because it's not just $5 a month. It's a reminder to me each month whenever I look at my plan, my donations that are coming in, that I have another person on my team who's praying for me, who is supporting me, and whose family is invested in what we're doing in this community.
Yeah, but I want to stop and I want to say, $5 could go a long way, sure. But I also want to challenge you, because if you look at your financial situation, you go through your budget, you see where your money's going, you see where your margin is. I want you to ask God genuinely, God, what do you want me to give? What do you want me to support this with? Because I think in a very real way, when you start to look at where your finances go, you look at where your heart lies. And Jesus talks about that, right? He talks about money a good bit. And so the reason I'm stopping right there and to say that is because I think if we can stop and we can look at where our finances are going and where our margin's at, and we can ask ourselves the honest question, okay, God, do you want me to have these things, or do you want me to see potentially 18,000 students impact?
Right.
Like that's the reason I want to stop. And I understand you, trying to be gracious with that $5 matters. I think 100%. It does. I think if that's what you can give. But I also think in a very real way, it could be worth asking, because if we want to see this generation, the next generation, whatever, impacted, I think it's going to take some sacrifice. And I think when you look in the New Testament, all throughout the book of Acts, sacrifice is what moves the early church. Right. And so, I don't know, just maybe take a minute and stop, ask, consider what you could give to
That's
that.
good. Can I derail us for a minute, though?
Yeah.
For you too.
Because I 100% had just momentary PTSD when AJ started that spiel. Because no, not quite. So I saw a video in TikTok and got down the algorithm of this pastor who's, he's like an internet pastor or whatever. And the guy's trying to raise, $2 million for something. And he's like,
I saw
now,
this.
I know, that some of y'all, give $10, $20, but some of you, there are some of you who have $200,000 and God's wanting you to write that check for 200. If we just had 10 people give $200,000, what are we doing?
Yeah, I'm not that guy.
What are we doing?
But if you do know somebody, I'd love to talk to them.
You would not turn down a check for $200,000?
No.
So maybe coincidence, irony, or the sovereignty of God, this pastor also got put on trial for tax evasion and fraud, convicted, and lost his tax-exempt status.
Let me assure everybody here that FCA has tons of measures to prevent that from happening. So
dude, that was nuts when that guy started doing that. Legitimately, guys, this guy was preaching and he was telling them, some of you guys have been building up a savings account for a rainy day or for retirement one day, but God's telling you right now to go empty out your retirement account and give to this
Dave says don't do that.
He said, I'm not saying that God does not lead us to do things that are counterintuitive and that go against the prevailing wisdom of the day.
Right.
But man, I just can't think of what it would take to have the audacity of someone to do that while he's wearing, Gucci belt and a $5,000 watch. And anyway.
Yeah, I think
fire me up.
one of the things that me and Chip would speak to is the integrity of the guy that we're letting have a mic today. So.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I will say
our
AJ,
conversations. Yes, I will bet that.
Would you call him love?
AJ on the side has asked, so I'm going to volunteer this, but I'm going to send him my link, and hopefully maybe that'll also get put up to donate. And so,
the Deucer's ahead of you, bro.
He's ahead of me. I love that.
He's already got it in the notes.
So yeah, that's the link, and you'll get to see a picture of my beautiful wife and my two boys, and then I'm also in it, but you won't look at them, or you all look at me when you see those guys. And it just kind of has,
you guys. Look at you.
Love
that. Man. I love it.
It has the link to donate, and you can do one-time donation. You can do a monthly donation on there. Able to be, we'll send you your taxes and everything through that. So just, if you're interested, again, I'd love to sit down face to face with everybody and have those conversations. So thank you guys though, just kind of for the FCA side of this.
Yeah.
I am anxious just in my normal personality about this, but I'm also trusting that it's going to be wonderful.
That's good. All right. Well, so here, let me pivot us a little bit. Unless you got something.
Well, no, I was just going to say we've been talking serious.
I know.
For a long time, and when the three of us are around the table, we don't talk.
We don't do that.
Serious.
No, this is the rarity. Usually, it's about how awful the Braves are.
Easy.
How Ohtani's
the best team in baseball.
Things of that nature. But real quick, I want to do that on the topic of Trey. Trey, we saw something on the internet yesterday, right, related to personality styles, and it was a comment section.
Oh yeah.
And one of the comments was like,
Church social media is phenomenal. Whole nother level.
It could be gold or it can be incredibly cringy.
No, I mean, just and my favorite ones are just random churches out of nowhere that sometimes pop up on my feed. It's phenomenal.
Have you seen the church signs? Like the church sign clip?
So you don't think Chip has that saved on his Safari?
Disclosure, I have submitted a few to church signs and gotten them shared, but that's just me. But I know which comment you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because, people hop in the online chats, right? And hey, I'm here. Good morning. You know, we have online hosts who greet them on our service every week. But I saw it because we had a friend screenshot it.
Yeah, it's sent in our little group.
And drop it in our group. And what was the comment?
It's blessed and highly flavored.
Blessed and highly flavored. So the question then was, if you were a flavor,
which flavor
would you be? So this feels like a very important discussion for us to have right now. So
if I'm donating to you, I need to know what flavor
I need to know this.
So I think I'd be cotton candy.
Okay, I did not.
I know you didn't see that coming. Think about
There's
it.
1,000 implications immediately that jump out.
See that.
I'm gonna be cotton candy, right? Because
I hope you got something good on the back.
You remember it back in the day, and it was so good when you were a kid, and you eat it as an adult, and it's instant regret. I'm just playing.
Wow,
you just had like at least $40 revoked,
right? Like I'm all in that
cotton candy.
I'm mainly cotton candy because it's fluffy, and that's kind of how people, think of me. I'm just a big fluffy guy. So
I can get there. I can get there for that. All right, AJ.
I did not see that coming. AJ, do you have your flavor? I still got to think about mine for a second.
Yeah, I think I do have my flavor.
Okay.
So I'm going to be like a very different flavor, very specific though. You guys remember the Tony catchphrase, Cajun seasoning comes in like the little green shaker or whatever?
Yeah.
That's me.
That's funny you said.
Because sometimes I'm spicy, but I'm also like older than anybody realizes and really kind of generic.
Is that true?
In spirit, I mean.
Is that true?
Spirit.
Because what do we hear all the time?
You'll have to tell me. We hear a lot of things.
People be looking at Chip and they'll be like, let's guess how old Chip is.
Oh, yeah.
The frequent guess is like 51.
Yeah.
55.
No joke. At Orange Conference Trade, 2 people thought Michael was younger than me.
Ooh,
process that for me.
He dresses younger than you.
Well, remember the whole comment about trendy pastors or whatever, trying to look cool, whatever.
Not touching that one.
I'm biting my tongue out of respect for Michael.
He does dress younger, and he did have people think he was younger. But what I meant is older. People think I'm, older, not like as in literally my age, but they recognize my old spirit. I was the guy. I was the guy at the dorm.
He's gonna be what?
40.
Shut your mouth.
Dang, dog.
I've
never you know what that means for us?
I've never cared about a birthday.
You know what that means for you and me, AJ?
What does it mean?
Dirty 30.
It does.
We're hitting it soon.
I have never cared about birthdays. This one's sneaking up on me. But anyway, I'm going to be that Cajun seasoning, a little bit spicy, more generic than I want to admit.
Okay.
Generic is hilarious.
I was thinking Chip was going to be salt and pepper. If we're being honest, I just thought it was going to be
just the old classic, baby.
That would have been spot. I'm going to change. I'm salt and pepper. I'm salt.
You're welcome.
That was great. All right. So, are you still thinking?
I was going to say hot and spicy.
For you?
Yeah, like not hot, just like flaming hot Cheetos kind of thing. You get the red hair vibe going, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. But I don't know. But I also feel like sometimes it's not like, I think spicy, I think aggressive, you know what I mean? And I'm not always aggressive. Sometimes spicy is just like, woo, you know what I mean? Let's have a good time spicy. I don't know if that's more cotton candy.
Oh, no, I got it. I have AJ's flavor.
Tell me my flavor.
I have AJ's flavor. AJ is the icebreaker gum when you take a swallow of cold water with it.
Ooh.
Just like cool. Really intense right there, but it fades away pretty quick.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that.
Phenomenal.
I was trying to think of some way to incorporate like big red or carrots or something like that.
Oh, nice.
But
all right, so he doesn't have a microphone this morning, but Deucer, if you were flavor, what flavor would you be?
Flavor.
Paprika.
Okay, tell us.
Classy.
I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, we put paprika on stuff. Tell us why paprika.
Oh.
Right, so say that into the mic.
Yeah.
Because they probably couldn't hear that.
You might can hear some of his echo, but he's saying he's paprika, but I don't know what paprika is. He goes, well, that's the whole point. People don't really know me, but once they get to know me, there's a whole lot there. I love that. We love the Deucer. He is.
But you don't love everything that's there. Like, for example, the Deucer's a cat guy.
Yeah.
We don't love
that.
It.
Was weird.
You know what I mean?
That was tough to listen to. That was tough to listen to.
Big.
I'm just kidding, Chris. I love you.
So, can I just, as we're having a little bit of fun, share one of my favorite Trey stories?
Yes, please do. I want to know the guy.
Chris, I don't know if you know this story, but it's actually part of the reason that you are here today is because several years ago, we were doing... AJ knows where we're going. Still don't.
I told this story the other day, actually.
Several years ago, we were doing a Christmas series.
I'm glad you're here to defend yourself.
And in this Christmas series, we made a custom countdown video to start the service that was a countdown of clips from Christmas movies. And this particular Christmas movie, this Sunday, was the movie Elf, Will Ferrell, one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. And so we found the countdown with Elf clips, and this is when Trey was on staff at the church, but not the student pastor at the church at this point. You know, he was on staff as an assistant, and his job was to watch this clip for us and make sure that it works on Sunday.
True or false?
Mostly true.
Mostly true. Okay,
True.
carry on.
And so on Sunday morning, I'm at the skating rink. This played everywhere, but I'm at the skating rink, and I'm watching the video.
It played everywhere?
Oh, it was played everywhere.
And I was on stage. I just would like to preface this with that.
He was. I'm sitting there in my seat at the skating rink, and I'm watching this countdown video, and somewhere around probably like 2 minutes, it's the clip where Peter Dinklage is like the CEO of the book company. And if you don't know who Peter Dinklage is, he is a small person, a little person who's a famous actor. And he is
that politically correct?
He is in the boardroom, and Will Ferrell's character keeps calling him an elf, you know, and he's getting mad or whatever. And so Peter Dinklage looks at Will Ferrell's elf and says, I get more action in a week than you have in your entire life.
Yep, that's saying right there.
And then at that moment, I just look at Trey, and he makes eye contact with me, and I was like, "What are we doing?" And somehow, as much as I tell that story, Trey escapes the culpability.
Yes. So I want to hear this side.
This public record.
Yeah.
Trey's the one who missed it.
But he's here to defend himself. So, all right, because he said mostly.
Yeah, mostly was just my way of getting out of it today. It was 100% my responsibility, and I watched it, but I watched it probably while I was texting or doing.
He was on his phone,
and it just went right over my head. I was listening for cuss words, and that one just like went right over my head.
Sure,
and then it played. And
what brought this up the other day?
I don't even remember.
Something brought this up because we talked about how when you just get excited, you don't vet things. It was something somebody did somewhere.
I know. And everybody's like, well, Chip, you didn't vet that? And I was like, well, I personally didn't vet that because I had a guy who said he vetted it, and he did, just wasn't listening to it while he vetted it. But let me let Trey off the hook just a little bit, because though Trey is the one who missed that line, it was fully my choice to play it again in the second.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Chip said at this point, the service programming is more important.
We're just going to go with it. We're just going to go with it.
Good times.
It's one of my favorite Trey stories. Do you have a favorite orchard story, Trey?
Oh, man, my favorite orchard story.
Oh, I remember. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you think, well, I think...
Yeah, think about your favorite. So this was... I remember why this came up. It came up because of that men's conference. And the guy that was hired, I don't know if you've seen this, it's in Christian circles right now, but there's basically a men's conference, and they had hired a gentleman to do a sword swallowing act, but this
with a gigantic metal pole and his shirt off. Go ahead.
Yes, and that part shouldn't become a shocker if you vet the guy, because his previous job was like male stripper, and so nobody vets this guy. They throw him up on the stage to do the sword swallowing act, and it ends up being like obviously somewhat provocative, right? And there's a pastor that gets up, and this is a whole nother conversation, but basically there's a pastor that gets up the next morning who was all for it when it was happening. Next morning he gets up and he gets on stage, and he's like rebuking it, and he's calling the church out, he's calling the leadership out.
I'm not sure he was all for it when it was happening. The grapevine on the backside is that he had plenty of time to voice his concerns before he got up on stage, but he didn't. He was like, oh man, that's cool. Whatever.
The grapevine is... The person sitting next to him said he was the first one on his feet clapping and cheering during this whole thing.
Everything's the grapevine unless you hear it from the person's mouth.
Yeah, touche. So anyway, so that was the whole, that's what started this whole vetting conversation. And while we were still thinking about your favorite orchard story, I remember just telling the guys who were talking about this in a separate group chat, I have learned that sometimes when you become passionate about an idea, the vetting kind of gets thrown to the wayside, or you're really excited. And I remember doing student ministry. This is actually in Live Oak, and I'll never forget this, but I'm doing it's one of those videos, Jimmy Kimmel did it, and basically a collaboration of parents get their kids crappy gifts, right? And the kids are excited because it's got wrapping paper on it, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's a Christmas gift, and it's like a half drink think of apple juice, right? And they're like, oh, what the heck, whatever. And so by the end of it, there is, I'm not going to use all the same verbiage because it was obnoxious, and I should have watched a 5-minute and 16-minute video all the way to 5:16, and I stopped about 4:40 and thought, this is great, this is hilarious, I'm going to play this.
That'll do it.
At the 5:15 mark, one of the kids opens a present and the mom's like, well, Jimmy Kimmel told me to do it. And the kid just says something absolutely obnoxious about Jimmy Kimmel, like just one of those out of the mouth of babes kind of thing that you wouldn't expect. And the kids thought it was hilarious and they lost it. The leaders looked at me like I was the biggest moron that ever walked the face of the earth, while I was also thinking I might be the biggest moron that's ever walked the face of the earth. So when you get excited about a good idea, you don't always vet it. To your defense, Trey, or maybe not to your defense because this is mostly your fault, like you said, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, it happens.
So just to bring this a little bit full circle is that if there's ever a guy who is swallowing swords shirtless with a metal pole at the orchard, multiple people will be fired. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah,
just throwing that out there.
Can't fire me. I'm a volunteer.
Changes talent show act. All right.
Okay, I got my story.
All right, tell us.
So it's from my time as a student pastor here. I'm going to go just flip it into student ministry. We're at summer camp, and I'm going to keep the last names out, but I'm going to throw the first names because I want to see your reactions. These are 3 students, Jared, Josh, Chase, and they get on the phone. We're staying at like a resort, and so it had like hotel-style phones where you could just dial room numbers, and that's how you got a hold of people. They called every room at the camp and told them that the beach was closed the next day for cleaning. Okay, which is kind of funny in itself, right? And like they had this voice going on. They're like, "Hey, this is so-and-so from, whatever resort we were staying at. We just want to let you guys know you can't be on the beach tomorrow because there's a cleaning going on." And that's funny in itself, except for the next morning. And by the way, I will fully admit I was in the room while they were doing it, and I thought it was hilarious. The next morning, we're sitting in there for morning worship, and they come on stage. No. The camp announcer comes on stage and says, "Hey, we've heard that people have been told that the beach was closed for cleaning. We want to just let you guys know we didn't call and send that out. So we don't know who did, but the beach is open." And like our student ministry lost it. I mean, everybody's just sitting there like belly laughing the whole time.
No.
And that was a fun story of some of my time at the orchard. That one stands out for sure at student ministry. Like we got the whole camp to believe that the beach was shut.
So were y'all doing it so you could have the beach to yourself?
I wasn't. I hate the beach. They may have been, but it was just more
a desert by water.
Yeah.
Amen.
Maybe it's because I was born and raised in Florida.
Water you can't drink.
Yeah, right.
Maybe worse than a desert.
I don't love it.
It's the giant teeth.
It's the only water I know that I need to shower after I get out of.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you about not the only water I know. They just drained the pond here behind the office, and woof, that smelled terrible.
R.I.P. R.I.P. to a good time. R.I.P. to Chasen's fishing episode with me. R.I.P. to all those bullfrogs.
That's right. Jason caught him at least a 6-inch bass out of there.
Yeah, which is crazy because one of the guys doing the work back here messaged me on Facebook and said, "Hey, there's not only frogs back here, but we scooped up about a 4-pounder." So
if you knew there had to be something in there.
Yeah. But that's a good story.
Good times.
Good times.
Well, it's a fun conversation today.
It was.
Thank you guys for having me.
Anything else that we need to cover before we wind this thing down?
No, I would just
Anything
recommend
Braves related.
Oh gosh.
I mean, we had a nice.
Yeah, I'll say this. Let me say this real quick. Don't worry about the Braves for a second, Trey. Let me talk about the Braves for a second. Okay. I think there's not a bigger cult following in sports than what has happened in the Southeast with Braves fans. That's what I think. I think they're not driven out of passion. I think they're not driven out of love for a team and an organization. I think Braves fandom is driven by the fact that it was the only television, the only baseball on television that was able to be broadcasted that heavily in the Southeast, and you're not actually Braves fans. You have no hometown allegiance. You don't actually like the Braves. It was all you had, so you tolerated it and eventually somewhat kind of liked it.
Are you trying to take this?
There's my hot take.
Because I'm not.
Hold on. So what's your MLB team?
The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, baby. That's how you know it's real.
Who's their left fielder?
Currently, Joe Adell.
Joe Adell?
Yeah.
You sure he's not down in the minors again?
No, they got brought back up. He's been hanging with it for a little bit.
Okay. Who's the right fielder?
Currently, it's been a hodgepodge. That's been the rotating.
Okay. I'm impressed you know that.
Yeah.
I'm impressed you know that.
I know that Michael Nelson Trout be sitting in center field, boy.
That's right. That hometown allegiance, baby.
Yeah.
Los Angeles
Big
Angels,
time.
let's go.
And the team that got posted about more than anybody else last year in baseball. But hey, we're the guys who have bandwagon.
I will say this.
And also, let me throw this out there. If that man just said like most overrated cult following franchise, I have 2 words for you, my friend.
Florida
Dallas
Gators.
Cowboys.
Yeah, across all sports, absolutely.
You said across all sports.
Sure, I meant baseball, but yes, you're right. I would agree with that entirely.
Which,
I think
by the way, how did
true.
the Cowboys not take a running back in the NFL draft?
Because they went back and signed Zeke.
I guess.
It's just silly.
Man, we are off the rails fully.
Well, you guys can put a positive spin on the Braves here if you would like to.
I don't need to put a positive spin on the Braves. Look at the positive spin on themselves.
Look at their record.
We got guys who are dying to come to play in Atlanta, and will take a pay cut to be part of that culture, baby.
I'll say this. One of the best experiences, and I haven't been to a ton of stadiums, but one of the best fan experiences in baseball is in Atlanta.
It's a good time.
Yeah, that's right. So we have legends.
You do.
Hank Aaron.
Sid Bream.
Sid.
Oh, shout out to Jason.
Love it.
Go ahead, Trey. What were you to say? Sorry.
I just am lost in the Braves right now. I could say a lot. I'm not going to.
It's better this way.
It's good. It's good. Well, it was fun, Trey. We'll have to get you back on sometime.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Tell some more stories about you. We'll have to vet them ahead of time.
Yeah, no joke.
Get a camera next time so we can see the man behind the mic. But
the deucer.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed this. The stuff is going to be in the show notes. Right, Chris? Chris, give me a thumbs up so you can figure out a way to support FCA, impact lostness, 18,000 students. We want to find a way to love on them and let them know about Jesus. And so do that, lean into that, pray about that, and what you would give to kind of help do some of that as well. So, man, I'm excited for you. I think it's incredible to watch this journey, and I think it's a thankless job in a lot of ways. And so it's cool to see you lean into it and watch God use it. So
super excited.
It'll be good. Anything else, Chip?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, then we will catch you guys next week.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk About That. We hope it encouraged and challenged you as we continue to grow in this journey of faith and embrace community. If you have more questions, thoughts, or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us through our social media channels or visit our website and stay connected. Your questions are what make this podcast a dynamic and enriching experience. If you found today's discussion meaningful, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your engagement helps us spread the message and connect with others who may find value in these conversations. Until next time, we hope this episode inspired you and will help you bring Sunday's message into your week ahead. Keep the conversation alive, and remember, we're all on this journey together.